Today, out here in Utah again at ARCHES National Park. I'm going to be hiking the Devil's Garden Loop. ARCHES is officially my last Utah National Park that I haven't been to, and I've been kind of avoiding it for a while. It is by far the most popular and crowded park here in Utah because of its accessibility from 70, the highway, and then Moab, of course, being kind of its own little mecca. I just woke up this morning and Colorado is in a really poor shape with avalanche conditions, and winds were like 70 miles per hour today. Wanted to film some content, so made the drive out, and yeah, excited to check this loop out. Should be just about 7.9 miles, and a bunch of kind of attractions and arches along the way that I'll talk about as we get closer. If you plan on visiting here April through October, I believe it is, at least at the time of this filming, you have to have a reservation as well. So again, just kind of speaks to how popular this spot is. More information on all that can be found in the full hike guide linked in the description below. You'll notice that, I'm hoping at least based on other national park hikes, there's a bunch of little arches along the way first, and I'm hoping after that the crowds will thin a bit. But definitely, even in March, which is when I'm here, insane amount of crowds. And this is the off season in ARCHES. First up, you have about a 0.3, maybe a little bit longer detour here, and it's going to bring you to Tunnel Arch, which is right behind me, above my head right now, and then Pine Tree Arch. Totally optional. If you don't care about seeing arches, you can keep on the main trail. While we're just starting this hike in ARCHES National Park, if you haven't checked out my other Utah National Hike videos and blogs, hike guides, check those out. I have a whole section on the website and playlist of videos here on the channel. So that was Pine Tree Arch. Not that it's like an extra 50 feet, but between these two, Pine Tree is significantly more visually appealing than the Tunnel Arch over that you saw first. Next up will be super obvious, but this is the Landscape Arch. You don't really have to even go off the trail to see it. After just about a mile and a half, you'll find your trail split super well marked, and the primitive trail is where you'll be heading next. Basically from here back to the car is another 4 miles. So if you're just to continue what you were doing before, you'd save about 2 miles or so. But this is definitely going to be far less popular. You'll get a little bit more space on the trail. And if you were any kind of like ADA needs, this trail probably isn't the best bet for you, but you could do that whole one back there in a wheelchair or something like that. Story of this hike, and it's hard to put into perspective as always, is the desert, and in particular the views behind me here. Absolutely gorgeous with the snow-covered peaks and the sandstone. It's just really dramatic, beautiful backdrop. Just as I thought, so far it's been really quiet back here, which is a really nice change of pace. And like I said, that's usually how it goes in national parks. Most people will put in 2 miles or so and then they'll turn around, regardless of like what the activity is. Even in the narrows, most people don't go past that point. If you've seen any videos on my channel, you know how I feel about crowds, but I think the positive of that is you really can always kind of find ways to avoid them, even in the most popular trails and spots in national parks, whether it be getting there early or later in the day or venturing deeper into a park. Usually you can shake the crowds and kind of have your own space, which is ultimately what I'm looking to do when I get out into nature. About 2.5 miles in here, where trail has entered the wash, and a wash is basically like where water runs when it's snow melt season. Not sure if this one's still active or not. Probably not, because it's like the main trail, but always a good idea to keep an eye out for flash floods anytime you are in an area like this. Signs to look out for would be like water just starting to appear out of nowhere, especially if it's completely dry, or if it's running already, a pickup of current. nothing crazy, just rock super well worn out, so good grip on your shoes will make this a lot more fun. Naturally, I'm wearing the trail runners that I walk the dog in, which means they've been retired with 2 times as many miles as they should have. So I'm just taking it pretty easy. So as you get to the end of the canyon here, there's going to be a section where you're going to scramble. And it's kind of exposed, I guess, but you're basically going to hop up here and then head right over there. Definitely not a death-defying exposure, but pretty good. Again, you're really going to want good grip on your shoes for this because those sandstone is so worn out in some of these sections. If you're a seasoned hiker, I'll leave it at that. The moves on this loop here, Devil's Garden loop, won't be anything for you, but if you do have kind of a fear of heights or are a little inexperienced, it might be a little tricky in sections. Not like you can't do it, but definitely expect a little bit of a challenge, I guess I can say. Another small detour here to Private Arch, and it's about 0.3 miles. I don't know if that's one way or a round trip, but in either case, not a super long detour to tack on another arch. Alright, this is a Private Arch here. Nice little hidden, snuck in back here. There's also a pretty good viewpoint if you head up a little bit further. This is the last arch on the official. Okay, after a quick detour to Private Arch, you're just going to continue this way. As the sign said, you get about 2.5 miles left in your hike back to the car. So definitely over halfway through it. Kind of taking these for granted, but along the way, if you do see like a social trail like that and you're not sure which way to go, there's always a little sign. So just leaving Double O Arch, actually right behind me there. Pretty cool little spot to explore. Insane viewpoint up here. This looks like it's going to be the high point of the hike, but absolutely worth it just to see this view. Back on the main non-primitive trail, and just read up about Landscape Arch. It looked a little weird to me. So in 1991 it cracked and a bunch of it fell off. This dude from Fort Collins actually snapped a picture of it happening, which is pretty cool. So check that out if you come here on the sign. But basically it talks about how overall I would say the Devil's Garden Loop was a solid one. Not one of my favorites in the national parks here in Utah, but certainly a good hike. But it's looking like it's going to be a little short of the 8 miles they said on the signs. Granted, I skipped a couple little out and back arch viewpoints just because arches for me are kind of all the same. Over 1,000 feet of gain too, which is great. No dogs allowed on this one because we're in the United States. No dogs in national parks, really, for the most part. There are camping spots, so I'll have that in the full hike guide as well. The star of the show is the mountains to your south here when you're hiking, especially this time of year when they're snow-capped. It's just really, really pretty and hard to not just keep gaping at it. So Devil's Garden, 6.5 miles, give or take a little bit, depending on how many little variations you want to make, and about 1,050 feet of elevation gain. So Nice little vert. I wouldn't say necessarily family friendly. There's some spots where if you have really small kids who aren't used to hiking or kind of clumsy or whatever, it could be kind of dangerous, but otherwise pretty much friendly for everybody, anybody who's willing to put up 7 miles or so. Definitely glad I tackled it, heard good things about it, but I have a lot of energy left still. So I'm gonna head over to Delicate Arch now, and that's like a 3-mile round trip hike. So that'll be part 2 of this video. To wrap up this one, Devil's Garden, as always, full hike guide in the description below. If you want to help support the channel, shop my virtual Sherpa Colorado hats or any other gear. That's linked in the description below as well. Part 2 of my day here in Arches National Park will be linked in the description below. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you on the next adventure.